So earlier today, the Las Vegas Raiders had the final practice before that game against the Chargers. And we got some good news coming out of practice. Some news that, we're kind of 50-50 on. Brock Bowers officially practiced for the Raiders today. So he's going to go into the game on Monday with a quote-unquote questionable game status. But according to Pete Carroll, he is good to go. And Pete Carroll even used the words that Brock Bowers looked terrific during practice. So at this point, it looks like Brock Bowers is good to go. And we also got another update in terms of like the knee with Brock Bowers. We weren't sure. There were some doctors on Twitter that talked about the knee. Some people are like, hey, it's an ACL injury. It's an MCL injury. And if he plays, there's a chance that long term he could get impacted, right? If he goes out there and he plays and he takes another big hit, long term, he could potentially be out. And this is what some of the doctors are saying. But the injury that they thought he had is not what he actually has. At this point, they're pretty sure he has what is called a PCL injury, which basically means he just hit the knee in an awkward position. And at this point, there's no issue. Like, if he takes another hit, like, there's not going to be a long-term thing that's going to end up happening with the knee, right? So there's no long-term worry with Brock Bowers. So he can go into this game, and there is a chance that when he takes that first snap in that game on Monday, keep in mind, he basically has the rest of Saturday to kind of relax and heal. He has all of Sunday to relax. And he has pretty much most of Monday as well as the game's going to be later on at nighttime. There's a chance he's 100% to go, right? Like there's, no issue. He has no limp. He has no pain when that game kind of rolls around. So because it's a PCL injury, it's actually a huge positive for the Las Vegas Raiders. So Brock Bowers is good to go, which is phenomenal news for the Raiders. Obviously, he's probably our best offensive player, arguably our best overall player, a phenomenal football player. We did get another update today, and this one kind of sucks, but this was already kind of expected, I think, when when he was kind of listed on the injury report yesterday with the concussion. That is Jackson Powers-Johnson is out. He is not playing for the Raiders against the Chargers. At this point, we don't really know what's going to happen as we kind of go forward. The last time Jackson Powers-Johnson had a concussion, he missed like 5 weeks. So we're at the point where we don't really know. I have a friend that does like medical things, and he's not like a professional sports doctor, but like he's very smart, a lot smarter than I am. And I spoke to him a little bit about like the concussions that Jackson Powers-Johnson's dealing with. And he used Tua Tagovailoa as an example. He said that, Tua kind of went through this as well, where, a guy like Tua could take a big hit. And, on the other side of it, a guy like Derek Carr or Dak Prescott or Khalil Mack or Amari Cooper, these guys could take the same hit that Tua Tagovailoa takes, but Tua is just going to react differently to that hit, right? Because he's already had concussions in the past, as opposed to a guy like, Derek or Khalil. These guys would be perfectly fine. For Tua, he could be having long-term headaches after he has that concussion, or, even if it's not a concussion, if he takes let's say he takes a big hit during a game, he's perfectly fine for that game. He can go to sleep and wake up the next day and have a huge headache. And then the headache doesn't go away for 4 or 5 days. And he thinks that that's what's happening to Jackson Powers-Johnson. When I watched the tape of the Patriots game, I had kind of noticed this, that Jackson Powers-Johnson was just like a little slow out there. He was kind of like woozy looking, if that makes sense. There are multiple plays where he's like spinning around, not really blocking anyone. And when I watched the tape, I said something definitely looks a little off with this guy. And there was a play that happened where it was Clavon Chasen hit Jackson Powers-Johnson. Powers-Johnson fell, and then Clavon Chasen like pushed him all the way through the pile. And not saying that caused the concussion necessarily, but I thought to myself, I wonder if this play right here caused him to have some sort of injury, because the play right after Clavon Chasen did that to Jackson Powers-Johnson, JPJ gave up the sack to Harold Landry on the defensive line game. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder if there's something that's kind of going on with JPJ. And then when he popped up with the concussion, it kind of made sense. And I know that, what we were kind of told is that he had the concussion as of Thursday and it did not happen in the actual game. I think that's like the story that's kind of trending. I don't buy into that. I think there's a good chance, especially given Jackson Powers-Johnson has had a concussion in the past. I think there's a good chance that this guy ended up getting hurt in that game on Saturday. And not that it was a concussion and he was knocked out of the game and he had to come out, but, when he woke up on Monday, we don't know if he had that headache, or on Tuesday, kind of how he felt. I find it hard to believe that this happened on Thursday and then he had a concussion as of Friday. Again, I don't think this is like the general concussion where he's going to be in the concussion protocol. I don't think that's happening. I don't think that's what's happening here based off the guy that I spoke to. Um, so again, hopefully Jack Sparrows-Johnson is fully healthy. Some people have mentioned he should be wearing a Guardian cap. I'm sure he'll figure it out at some point. Hopefully he is healthy and he can kind of figure it out. I believe he had a concussion once in college as well. Don't quote me on this, but someone in the comments mentioned this. So this would technically be the third concussion he's had, right? So just kind of keep that in mind as we go forward. Again, hopefully he's able to figure it out. If it's a Guardian cap that helps him, great. I think it was Leighton Vander Esch that also spoke about, there's like a neck thing you can kind of get. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he had spoken about this in the past. He dealt with a lot of concussions, and he talked about how you can, there's like these technologies that you can get. So hopefully he's able to kind of figure out the issue, and hopefully he's here for week 3 against the Commanders. I do think having Powers-Johnson out there does make a huge difference. Alex Kappa's going to go out there, and I'm sure the offensive line will be fine, but I'm sure there's also going to be moments that we're going to point to and say, that's unfortunate right there, right? It'll be a 3rd and 7 and someone misses a block and the quarterback's going to go down, right? There's going to be moments where maybe the run game is not going to get going. Maybe a guy gets blown up in the backfield. Don't overlook the fact that the Chargers, they're going to attack guys like DJ Glaze. They're going to attack guys like Alex Kappa and Jordan Meredith, right? Jesse Minter's a phenomenal defensive coordinator. And let's go ahead and just switch in and talk about this a little bit. Let's go ahead and at this point just get into some of what I think the Chargers showed in that first game against the Chiefs. When I watched that game live, I didn't feel like the Chargers were so much better than the Chiefs. I just felt like the Chiefs really just didn't play a good game. They kind of came off of, hey, we're just in the Super Bowl. We're basically in the Super Bowl every year. It's just a random regular season game. And then for the Chargers, it was almost like, hey, we need to win this game. We need to, prove to the world that we're a Super Bowl caliber team. I didn't feel like the Chargers were such a great team in that week. And I know they had success. So don't think I'm not saying that they're not a good football team. They obviously are. But I don't think this is one of those situations where the Chargers are just so much better than the Raiders and that they're going to come into this game and just like score 80 points. In fact, there's a chance that the Raiders end up holding the Chargers to like, around, between like 19 to 24 points. The defense that the Raiders showed last week, I think, was pretty solid. Obviously, in an environment where it's not raining, where it's not wet, will make a big difference, and we'll see if this team on the defensive side is legit. Same with the run game. We'll see. Even though we don't have JPJ, we should be able to see if the O-line can open up, lanes potentially for the running back. But one of the things that the Chargers did a really good job at this past game was they had explosive plays. 7% of the plays that the Chargers called on offense were quote-unquote explosive plays. And I feel like that was a part of why they had almost 400 yards. There were moments where like Justin Herbert threw it to his wide receiver for 2 yards and the receiver took it 40 yards. Right? There were moments where they had those type of plays. And I think for the Raiders, the one thing they did do against the Patriots were that they limited the explosive plays. So I think that's going to be a key part of the Raiders having success against the Chargers. You have to limit explosive plays. Another thing that the Chargers did a great job at this past week was yards per play. They averaged almost 6 yards per play, which, think about that. Over the course of a game, on almost every play, you're getting 6 yards. You're basically scoring a touchdown every single time, right? And for the Raiders, they're not necessarily great in terms of yards. I think this past week, I guess it's not terrible, but they gave up 336 yards. That puts you at the 21st ranked defense in terms of yards. So that's not great. But on the other side of it, the Chargers pick up a lot of yards. So, again, I think for the Raiders, one of the key things is going to be if you're going to give up yards, that's okay. But you got to get stops down into the plus territory, the red zone area. The Raiders have to be able to get off the field. And then just kind of looking at the Chargers' offensive line, they've tried to revamp the O-line a little bit. They drafted Joe Alt last year in the first round. They went out there and they signed Mekhi Becton this offseason. They extended Rashawn Slater as well this past offseason. And their O-line kind of got banged up a little bit, right? You had Rashawn Slater, who I believe tore his ACL. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he has a season-ending injury. So they have to take their right tackle, Joe Alt, and they essentially moved him over to the left tackle position. Joe Alt is a new left tackle, relatively speaking, right? At least in the NFL, right? Although I know he played left tackle in college, but he's going to be their starting left tackle. So we're going to see a lot of Malcolm Koonce against Joe Alt. That's going to be an interesting matchup because Joe Alt is long, and I do think Joe Alt does a great job using his hands. And I think with Koonce, he also does a good job with like movement. And I don't think Joe Alt's super quick and like super explosive with his movement. So that could potentially favor the Raiders. So we'll see if Malcolm Koonce can kind of take advantage of that. But with Joe Alt moving over to the left tackle position, the Chargers are starting Trey Pipkins at right tackle, which some people did not think that they would roll with Pipkins. Some people thought they would put in Jamari Salyer. Salyer in, I think, Rashawn Slater's second year. Rashawn Slater tore his ACL. Salyer started every game at left tackle for the Chargers, and he was pretty solid. And, people thought that they'd put him in at the right tackle position, but they ended up not making that decision. They went with Trey Pipkins, which is really good for the Raiders. Maxx Crosby should be able to have success against Pipkins. Now, one of the things we are going to have to realize is in this game, the Chargers are going to run the football a lot. And even more than that, anytime they throw the football, it's going to be play action passes. So they're also going to have a lot of tight ends double teaming and chipping. If you guys remember last year in the first game of the season, the Chargers tackled Joe Alt, lined up at right tackle, and people were saying, hey, he absolutely erased Maxx Crosby. Maxx Crosby had no winning reps. Maxx Crosby did nothing against Joe Alt. And I know Maxx Crosby is motivated from, that narrative that happened in week 1. Maxx Crosby's going to want to go out there and beat up on the Chargers. Now, he didn't get to play the second time the Raiders played the Chargers, right? Maxx Crosby was already out for the season at that point. So he's going to be a little bit more motivated for this game a little bit. One of the things we do have to remember, though, is when you're a run-first team, you're going to chip and double team with your tight ends a lot. Right, you're going to be having your guys basically, your tight ends, your second tight end, even your third tight end, they're going to be helping on Maxx Crosby. So I do expect the Chargers to double team Maxx Crosby on pretty much 100% of snaps, which doesn't mean that Maxx Crosby should have no impact. He should still potentially get after it a little bit. But we need Adam Butler to step up this game. We need Thomas Booker and Jonah Laulu. We need these guys to step up. If there's any weakness on the Chargers offensive line, it's going to be that left guard center. Although I don't personally think the left guard's a bad football player, right? Zion Johnson, I think he's a pretty good offensive lineman. He has struggled in the past. He was pretty solid in that first game against the Chiefs, but he didn't really go up against Chris Jones all that much. And I think they double teamed Chris Jones a lot as well. We got to get Adam Butler. We got to get Thomas Booker. We got to get these guys to take advantage of the left guard center that the Chargers have. Mekhi Becton is a physical monster, man. He will move people out of the gap. Now, he is on the slower side as an offensive lineman, so you might have an opportunity there as well to generate a little bit of get into the backfield potentially. Looking at the Chargers offense, the fact that they want to run the football and they want to be a run-first team, the Raiders are a team that's going to stack the box, so we're going to make it hard for them to run the football. So that's going to benefit the Raiders right away as well, right? The scheme elements of it. We are going to play a little bit more aggressive with more guys in the box. The Chargers, although Justin Herbert can sling the ball downfield, they're not going to come out in shotgun. They're not going to open up the playbook for Herbert. They're still going to play conservative. So I think for the Raiders, going to just limit those big plays, limit the explosive plays specifically. Chargers ranked 11th in week 1 as the 11th most explosive team. The Raiders had the 13th best defense limiting explosive plays. Now, we played the Patriots, obviously, so I think that does make a little bit of a difference. But just keep in mind, right, for the Raiders, I think this is a really, really good matchup. And then even if you swap to the other side, I do look at the Raiders' offensive line. I do think it's a weak point at this point right now. We can get better and we can still continue to develop. But, what I noticed from that first game of the season was, the right tackle had 13 losing snaps. The center had a bunch of losing snaps. Left guard, right guard, both had a bunch of losing snaps. Colton Miller was the only positive in that first game. And again, I know the weather kind of impacts that a little bit. But our offense line did not look good. And, we talked about this way back right after, the free agency period kind of happened. And I said that I don't think John Spytek has invested enough on the offensive line. And if we don't invest on the offensive line, we're going to struggle down the line. We invested money in Alex Cap. I never liked that pickup. I think it's a waste of money. Still think it's a waste of money. What you gave Kappa, you could have just doubled it, right? You gave him $11 million. You could just give him $22 million for 2 years of like Tevin Jenkins or a different guard that was potentially available. Mekhi Becton, but I gave him a 1 year, $12 million contract. Right? I think he got around that anyways with the Chargers. But the Raiders didn't really invest in that offensive line. So I think going up against the Chargers defense, we're going to struggle, I think, running the football. But I also think it's going to be key for the Raiders to get Ashton Jeanty the football in different aspects. If the Raiders can't run the football, if Ashton Jeanty can't break a big run because maybe there's not a rushing lane, he had like 45 yards after contact last week. He only had 38 actual rushing yards, which means he was getting hit in the backfield. He was generating more yards being hit in the backfield than what the Raiders' offensive line created. If we can't get him, broken free running the football the traditional way, give this guy a screen pass. I don't think I've seen the Raiders run a screen at all in all of preseason. A straight screen to the running back, not like a wide receiver screen, but a straight screen to the running back. I don't think I saw Chip Kelly run one in all of preseason or all of week 1. So if Ashton Jeanty can't get going, throw this guy a screen pass. Let your offensive lineman get out in front and block for him. I trust that Colt Miller, Dylan Parham, and Jordan Meredith, if you run a screenplay, those 3 guys can execute. And those 3 guys can potentially lead for Ashton Jeanty out in space. We got to get creative with Jeanty. Have him, if you get in a situation where the Chargers are showing you that, hey, we're in man coverage, cover 1, cover 2 man, whatever it is, let's get Ashton Jeanty motioned out and ISO him. And let's throw him the football in space. Let's take advantage of the unique skill that this guy essentially has. Luckily for the Raiders, the Chargers defense in the first game of the season, when it came to rushing yards, they weren't great. They're right in the middle. They gave up 98 rushing yards to the Chiefs. The Chiefs also got into a situation where they kind of got down. So hopefully the Raiders can potentially, either get up or just, in the normal pace of the game, just run the football and commit to it. All right, commit to Ashton Jeanty having those opportunities. Again, very excited for this game as it's kind of coming up. The Raiders offense ranked 3rd best in explosive plays. The Chargers defense ranked 10th best in explosive plays allowed. So it is just 1 week where we're taking some of these stats from. But again, I think for the Raiders, you got to go into this game. You got to be able to do some of the things you want to do. The scheme that the Chargers run, to me, it's an elite scheme. If you look at the defense, they don't have guys like that are eye-popping players. While you can look at the depth chart, 9 out of their 11 starters, you probably don't even know who the hell these guys are, realistically, right? But the thing with the Chargers is they don't rely on star players. They rely on scheme. And there's benefits to that, but there's also, cons, I should say, to that, which is if you don't have a star defensive tackle, the Raiders, if you have a star offensive, interior guy, you should be able to beat up on who that guy is. No scheme should be able to stop you. And for the most part, the Chargers don't have great interior defensive linemen. They have good players, they have veteran players, but for the Raiders, you have to be able to take advantage of that. The one matchup that I want to keep an eye on as we go into this game is going to be Khalil Mack against DJ Glaze. I think that's going to be a key part of this game. I do expect Chip Kelly to double team on DJ Glaze, or help DJ Glaze on Mack. But if there's anything that I've noticed from Chip Kelly's offense, we're going to run a lot of 5-man pass pro. Those plays are going to be interesting. And when we get on the other side of this game, right, come Tuesday morning, we'll talk about those plays specifically, right? When the Raiders get into 5-man pass pro and the Chargers, maybe they mix coverage, show cover 2, they end up, running some sort of like cover 3 out of that, right? When those moments happen, if Geno Smith doesn't get the ball out, if he gets a little confused, he's going down. If it's a one-on-one with Glaze and Mack, he's going to go down, right? So those are the moments that are going to determine this game for the Raiders. Let me know what you guys think, man. I know I did a lot of just talking and just kind of giving you guys my thoughts. I really didn't want to script this video and have like an actual talking points. Wanted to kind of give you guys my thoughts. This season for the Raiders feels different. But one of the shitty things with that first game is we got 2 injuries out of it. Right? We have Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers-Johnson getting hurt. Those are 2 of our best offensive players. And, for me, it does suck. This is kind of where we're at as a team right now. We don't have a lot of depth. We really don't. At tight end, we're pretty good. But, if you lose your best offensive player, right? If the Vikings lose Justin Jefferson, if the Bengals lose Jamar Chase, if you lose your best offensive player or he doesn't practice, he's not 100%, that's going to impact any team. And if we lose Brock Bowers, and I know he's supposed to play and he's supposed to be good, especially for the Raiders, and if he doesn't play, it impacts us a lot, right? And our offense line's already kind of on the weaker side. So not having Jax Powers-Johnson is going to suck, but we'll see what ends up happening. I still think the Raiders are going to be a great team this season. Hopefully the guys get healthy, and hopefully they can prove to like the world that, hey, we're a lot better than what people recognize. And, people are saying the Chargers are one of the top 3 teams already right after that first game of the season, plus what they kind of did last year, and obviously they have a great head coach in Harbaugh. People are saying that the Chargers are a top 3 team in the NFL right now. If the Raiders go out there and beat the Chargers, what does that say about the Raiders? Are the Raiders then a top 3 team in the NFL? Right? So I'm excited as hell for this game. Obviously, there's a lot kind of going for the Raiders as we kind of get into it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time with another video.